Hello everyone, welcome back to Affinity for Commander. My name is Alex, and today, as voted for by our amazing patrons, we're going to be taking a look at how to upgrade one of the new Commander decks from the new D&D set, the Forgotten Realms. As always, if you like any of the cards you see here, then be sure to check our affiliate links below for any of these lovely places to buy your cardboard crack from. Or if you'd like to zhuzh up your deck with some delightful alternate perfect fit sleeves, then be sure to use our link below to head over to altersleeves.com to peruse their extensive library of fabulous artwork. Using those links below doesn't cost you anything extra, and it helps the channel out a lot. Speaking of helping out the channel a lot, we want to thank our amazing patrons who make content like this possible in the first place. So thank you. Now, as stated, we're going to be going through the improvements for one of the new Commander decks. And as voted for by our patrons, we're going to be looking at Planar Portal, with our tome-bound face Commander being unfortunately removed. Yes, indeed, the first thing we're going to be doing is swapping out Prosper Tome-bound for instead the alternative Commander, again, voted for by our patrons. So let's take a look at what our beholder beholds. Karazikar, that's how you say it? Yeah, I'm not saying that the entire video. You know what, let's just call him Karen. Karen here is a 5/5 legendary creature beholder for 3 generic mana, 1 red and 1 black. They read, whenever you attack a player, tap target creature that player controls and goad it. Which is until the end of your next turn, that creature attacks each combat if able, and attacks a player other than you if able. And whenever an opponent attacks another one of your opponents, you and the attacking player each draw a card and lose 1 life. So our beholder wants to be looking upon our opponents hitting each other, maybe giving some incentive to do so, and otherwise some stronger coercive methods in the goading. So, first things first, let's take a look at what cards we're removing from this deck to make room for our improvements. Prosper Tome-bound, I don't care if you're the main commander, you've got nothing to do with what the deck is, so you're gone. Dark Dweller Oracle, Izzet Chemist, Chaos Channeler, and Wild Magic Sorcerer are great cards for Prosper Tome-bound, playing cards from exile and all. But Karen here wants things connecting with our opponents, not this exile theme, so these cards need to go. Same thing for Commune with Lava. You find some prisoners, light up the stage, ignite the future, Throes of Chaos, Bituminous Blast, or Apex of Power. Again, great for exiling, not for what we want to do. Although I am keeping Fevered Suspicion in, because flavor win. Bag of Devouring, Bucknard's Everfull Purse, Ebony Fly are just artifacts we don't need and can replace with better ones. And finally, Theatre of Horrors and Share the Spoils, for both being part of the exile theme from Prosper Tome-bound and committing the original sin of giving our opponents any sort of advantage. How dare you? And finally, for cards to take out, we move on to the lands. Oh, sweet Urza. Okay, the lands aren't this bad that time around, but there are still some that we can swap out for some better ones. Rakdos Canarium, Spine Rock Knoll, Underdark Rift are going to go. The bounce lands, I am only ever a fan of in very specific decks where lands being bounced isn't a big issue, or untapping them is really easy. I used to play all 3 of these in my Derevi deck because untapping lands is a big means of ramp in that deck, and those lands would normally be untapped by the end of my combat step. But in most cases, bounce lands are not great. The Knoll we'll probably never trigger, and we're kind of relying on our opponents for this. Not good. And finally, Underdark Rift, a powerful effect, but sorcery speed? Essentially, we're investing 6 mana and sacking the land, and on top of that, the dice rolling adds more variance to this. Yeah, not feeling it. So these 3 are out, and we're probably going to just add some fun lands by replacing some basics. We've got 39 lands in total, so let's also take out a land for a non-land card. 38 lands is plenty after all. So that in total is 20 cards out, so we're going to be looking for 20 cards to put in. So Karen over here is looking to goad a lot of creatures by making sure that our creatures attack. Now, yes, they do tap down a creature, so they're probably going to get through, but I'm not really a fan of the strategy that gets completely wrecked by our opponents having more than one creature. I'm also not a fan of my creatures dying in combat. So let's look at some ways around that. So we're looking for creatures that are very hard or very unlikely to be blocked. Dathuri Voidwalker, Nighthawk Scavenger, and Vampire Nighthawk are all great for getting in those Karen triggers, tapping down and goading our opponent's creatures whilst themselves hopefully surviving combat, either through flying and death touch or shadowy secretry. Or we can give creatures menace at a whim with Frontier Warmongerer, which also works for our opponent's attacking creatures. And with all these creatures slapping our opponents about, we can use cards like Grenzo Havoc Raiser to either goad more creatures for our commander's amusement, or steal some cards on the top of their libraries with Grenzo's second ability. Speaking of goading our opponent's creatures, Kaldor Doomscourge essentially goads all of our opponent's creatures on entry and has a pretty sweet static ability that should help us gain some life throughout the game, and hopefully whittle our opponents down a bit more. Geode Ranger is also a monster of a card, especially if you can trigger multiple instances of landfall with the Bloodstained Mire, or even just a Terramorphic Expanse or Evolving Wilds. Moving to the side of encouraging people to hit each other, we have Frenzied Saddlebrute, Fumiko Low Blood, Agitator Ant, and Bedlam. The Saddlebrute encourages our opponents to attack with some very specific haste granting. Fumiko forces attacks to occur each turn, and hopefully with her Bushido ability, we should be safe from at least some of the damage. Agitator Ant is a lovely way to make opponents hit each other, whilst making their beat sticks even bigger. And finally, Bedlam is a card I did not know existed until now, and so simple, creatures can't block. Pairing this with a card like Kaldor essentially goading all creatures both keeps us safe as they can't attack us, but at the same time is going to deal so much damage. So beyond these, let's try and include some more goadable cards like the Bloodthirsty Blade. A card that essentially for 3 mana means one creature on the board is never going to attack us, gets a little boost, and is now permanently goaded, hitting our opponents for us. And if that creature should die, be sacrificed, or simply be removed, then we can just simply re-equip the blade to something else. Now moving on to something I personally love for this deck is increasing the damage our opponents are dealing to each other. So cards like Furnace of Wrath, Dictate of the Twin Gods, or Fiery Emancipation if we really need the game to be over quickly. Because I will tell you right now, there's nothing funnier than someone swinging in for an okay amount of damage, flashing in Dictate of the Twin Gods, and making that okay amount of damage super not okay anymore. And to get to all these lovely cards, we're going to need some card draw, which our number of card draw spells currently stands in the deck at... yeah, that's what I thought. Yes, I know I took most of them out because of the Exile themed, but we're going to put in some better ones. So for Phyrexian Arena, for the consistency of 2 cards a turn, and a card that I actually really like here is Skeletal Scrying. Now normally in a black deck you'll have a bit of recursion, but we've got none at all. So being able to cast a massive spell in our opponent's end set to refill our hand seems very strong in our black deck that does not care about our graveyard. Now, as I said, we're taking some lands out, so we'll need to put some lands in. Commander's Beacon to grab our Beholder to our hand if they've been killed one too many times, and thanks to its reprint is actually now affordable. And for fixing Dragon Skull Summit, because why not? And a part of a cycle some people don't like very much, but I love it, is Graven Khans. Due to the high colour demand of a lot of our cards, looking at you, Furnace, Being able to make sure that we produce triple red with only 2 sources out is actually super helpful. Now, overall, whilst I do think Prosper is probably the more favourable and playable card of the two, I do think Karan has some better stats, and overall can make for some much more damaging plays. Goad your opponents, make no one able to block, and watch the players and creatures dance like puppets to your beholder's tune, like minimum wage employees struggling to find the manager when you forgot to get that Diet Coke that was so specifically asked for with exactly 2 ice cubes in it. Lest you incur the wrath of Karen and her 1-star Yelp review. And that will be the end of the video for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. What cards would you personally put in our Beholder's deck? How might you also mess with your opponents to make them attack one another? As always, if you like this type of content, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more just like it. And hit the bell icon, because YouTube is not great for letting you know when our videos come out. Also, you can follow us on Twitter @4Commander, and if you really like us, you could consider becoming a patron of the channel yourself for access to exclusive EDH related rewards. But for now though, guys, I've been Alex, and I will see you next time.